Kevin Richardson, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's go back to that night in April 1989. What were you doing in the park?
Well, I remember that day. It was Easter vacation, so I was just happy to be out of school for a while. And actually, I lived across the street from Century Park, which was the northern part of Century Park, of Harlem. So we was on Easter vacation, and I went to the park because I seen kids going there. And I just wanted to join the kids, not knowing what might happen, but I just wanted to be a part of something at that time. And I had a friend of mine that actually passed away, and he told me, don't go, I feel something that's funny about it. And I said, why not? Because I lived there. But then when I went in, I didn't come home for 7 years later.
It was dark, right?
Very dark.
What was the weather like that night? Was it a warm night? It was spring.
It was spring. It was a nice day. I remember exactly what I had on. I had a nice, spring jacket. I had my Easter clothes on. I was happy. I had some clothes I could wear that my mother brought me that she worked hard for.
So when did you know that something was wrong?
Okay, so when I first went into the park, it was many kids there. It was about 20 to 30 kids whom I never seen before. But in the area, I just seen them in passing. When I seen someone get attacked on a tandem bike, it was a couple on a tandem bike, then I realized this is not my cup of tea right here. So I decided to go home. I wasn't scared about what happened in the park. I was scared because I was breaking my curfew. And my mother grew up in the South where she didn't play. So I just wanted to get back home, and I was scared to break my curfew. So that's when I realized it was time to go home.
You were 14 at the time.
14.
When was your curfew?
My curfew was 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you were trying to get home so you didn't get in trouble with your mother.
Yeah, and it was Easter vacation. I still had the curfew at 9 o'clock. Yeah.
You probably didn't like that at the time.
No.
So from what I understand, when you really knew something was wrong is when the police came after you.
Sure. I remember this so vividly, like it was yesterday, and this was 1989. I was on my way home, actually, on Fifth Avenue. If anybody knows Manhattan, I was walking home, and then all of a sudden, I seen a slew of police cars circling us, and in particular, myself, I remember them coming to me, and the first thing I seen was the park, so I jumped back into the park over a wall. And that's when my clothes was muddy from rolling in the mud. And the last thing I remember was a cop telling me to freeze. And even where I was from at that time, even though you're innocent, but we had this fear of police because there was a lot of wrongdoing in my neighborhood. So I continued to run anyway. And the last thing I remember that I woke up and I was in a police van because I was knocked unconscious.
So they took you to the police station and they started questioning you. What was the tone like?
They have this term that's called good cop, bad cop. And when I first went into the park originally, I'm like, okay, I'm going to come home because they said they was going to give us a desk appearance for family court for an unlawful entry in the park and rioting, just being there. So I thought, okay, I'll be home in a few minutes. Those few minutes turned into a few hours, which turned into 3 days.
So what kind of questions were they asking you? And I think a lot of us from television shows, movies, know what at least it looks like, in an acting setting where a play or a movie of what bad cop, good cop is. Yeah. Is it like that? I mean, what were they doing?
We all been watched episodes of Law and Order and CSI, but this was a real life situation. And here I was, 14 years old. Don't look like the way I look now. I was very small, very fatigued, very small. And sort of slowly about what happened in the park, we don't know. The questions start to get a little bit more stern because the cops was not getting what they want. And first of all, neither one of us knew about anything about what happened. We just knew about a couple of events in the park. But as time went on, we could see that it went from one cop to two cops. Then they had the best of New York's detectives in one room, questioning a minor, which was a violation in the first place.
Did they let you know that you could get a lawyer?
When we were young, we heard about Miranda rights, right? But we never experienced it. So quite honestly, when I was young, I really didn't know what that meant. And I talk about it now. I kind of chuckle about it, but it wasn't funny at the time. I was like, who's Miranda? I really had no clue about my Miranda rights. And they have a thing where they'll talk to you and they'll tell you your Miranda rights while you're kind of dazed and not thinking, because remember, I was knocked unconscious before that. So they're telling me I have the right to remain silent. Anything you say will be held against you in the court of law, which is the second sentence. But that's all going over my head. But they were protecting themselves as well, that they read out on Miranda rights.
So this went on for over 3 days. And as you said, it became more stern. When did they start accusing you?
Okay, so not even the detectives knew about a woman being attacked, because nobody knew, because first of all, the guys, we wasn't there. So they received a call. The detectives received a call. I believe it was the next day, because we were being questioned so much. We were in rooms where there were no windows. But I realized that there was a lot of time that went by. Once that call came, they was going to let us go home and go to family court. And then it changed the tone. And the detective said, no one is going anywhere. And we're going to start speaking about a woman being attacked. And that's when we was just thrown off, because we didn't understand what they were speaking of.
Obviously, you were scared.
I think scared was an understatement. I was petrified. I thought, and my guys, which is my brothers now, we thought we might never leave that precinct. Because first of all, we was not under parental guidance, and we were 14, 15, 16 respectively. So it's a term I use that it felt like it was a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from.
Did they get physical at all?
Yes.
In what way?
For me, and now I know about the other guys as well, because now we know what happened to each one of us. But for me, first I was hit with the police helmet, and then there was a lot of pushing, shrugging, a lot of profanity being used. Some language saying that we know what happens in the Rikers Island with sexual
predators. Scare you with that, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to go there. And all I remember that I just wanted to go home. And as days went on, I just thought, please let this be over. And at this time, maybe it was in the second day of questioning, and we went to 3 different precincts. And I was like, is this going to end? And at that time, we wanted to tell them whatever they wanted to hear. And then when you look back at our statements and our videotape confession, it doesn't make sense. And it almost felt like we were being coached. And it felt like multiple choice, because they would tell us, for example, where was the scene of the attack? And we would just pick one. And if we really read the transcript, it didn't make sense. But at the time, it was an election year in 1989, and cops had to meet the quota, and which means, they have to arrest a lot of people at the time, and we were the victim of that. So it was a whole slew of things happening within those 3 days.
Those 3 days, what came out of it was the 5 of you confessed. Many people looked at that and said, okay, they have them dead to rights. Why did they confess? They wouldn't confess if they weren't guilty. Why did you confess?
Yeah. And when I tell people this, right, picture yourself in a room with seasoned detectives towering over you. And we never confessed to the actual rape, sexual assault. We all mentioned each other in it, because we didn't want to be involved in that, but not knowing, even stating that we already involved. So I know in my statement, I said this person was there, this person attacked a male jogger, which it didn't make sense because it didn't happen. But being there and being in a room for 3 days and thinking that your life is over, you would say anything. And adults would do this. So imagine children. And that's the thing, that they had children there, taking advantage of children. And that was the number one thing, that once they take control of your mind mentally, they have you. And they knew these word games, how to phrase it and how to make us very upset and very scared, So it became easy to them. But for us, it was very hard.
So it goes to court. Are you thinking, I'm innocent? There's no way they'll get a conviction, that they'll find us guilty. Is that what you were thinking?
So this happened in 1989, and we were going court back and forth until the end of 1990. And my trial, actually, was October 1990 to December 1990. The first trial, 3 of the guys, they lost trial. But me, still being young and naive and optimistic, I'm thinking, there's no way that I will get convicted. And once they figure out that I didn't do it, they will release the other guys. That optimistic was thrown out the window because we all was convicted. But even during that time, the year and a half of being out, it was hard just trying to survive on the outside because I couldn't be a regular kid. I had to drop out of high school because the pressure of being labeled a sex offender was very harsh for anyone, but for a kid, it was unimaginable.
So how were you treated outside of court?
I was treated like I was in prison because I had to be escorted everywhere with my sisters and my brother-in-law. Literally had to escort me everywhere I went. And when I went to school, in particular, I remember this. I was in 10th grade. And I remember kids that I thought I knew. And they said, "How you doing, Kevin?" And as I walked by, I could hear the whispers saying, "He's a rapist." And just imagine kids. My daughter's in high school now. I can even imagine someone saying that to her, that she's did something that wasn't true. So I had the strength from within to get through it, to get through that process.
So when you were convicted, it had to be a shock.
I remember that day, and I talked to my sister recently about this, that we was on deliberations, and the verdict was about to be read, and I just left. My whole family went into the courthouse, and my family was saying, wait, Kevin. I just wanted to be over. I didn't know where it would lean at, but I could realize at 16 at the time that it wasn't leaning to in our favor. But I just wanted to get it over with, whatever it was going to happen. And it turned out that I received a 5 to 10 year sentence.
So you were incarcerated where?
I started out in the juvenile maximum security, which it was a maximum security where all kids some did crimes that was very offensive. And there was some kids that actually was innocent, but they were all put into one location in which they would say, quote unquote, the worst of the worst was in that prison. So I had to learn how to actually mature faster than expected. I was still young, but my physical features I grew, and I had to become a man right then and there, even though I was a kid, and that's why I started my sentence. And then when I turned 21, my 21st birthday, I was graduated to a maximum security prison for adults. And that was my birthday for 21. And I spent the last 3 years there. So I wound up doing 7 years in 3 prisons.
Again, we all picture what prison is like, even the juvenile facility. Was it dangerous?
I like to paint the picture. The first day, we all was going to this place called Spofford Juvenile Center in the Bronx, New York. As we got there, entering, we heard kids on gates inside the prison screaming, "We're going to get you." Because the one thing you don't want to be in prison for is 2 things: to be a sexual offender. The only thing that trumps that is child molestation. And those are the worst things to be in prison for, innocent or not. Just to have that under you, over you, wasn't a good thing. So I remember speaking to one of the guys that day, and I told him, all we have is each other. I really didn't know what that meant at 14, at the time. But I just knew that we had to, band together because we didn't have our parents. We just had each other inside that place.
How did you survive?
I survived for people starting to see me and realize who I am. When people started to see my character, then they thought there's no way this guy could do that. And when they started to see me every day, they knew that. And I think the way that my actions was, the way I carried myself, people started to respect that. And also, I grew. Inside, I'm a big teddy bear. But on the outside, I had to have this persona, this style for people that, do not mess with me. And it's something that I didn't enjoy doing, but because of my surroundings, I had to adjust like that. I had to really watch my back and make sure that nothing's happened to me. With the grace of God, I was okay physically. Mentally, no. And I have seen many things in prison happen to others that I wouldn't wish that on my enemy. And it was very hard to adjust to, but it happened.
So when did you first hear the name Matisse Reyes?
Matias Reyes. The first time I heard of that name was when this was 2001, when they started to investigate Matias Reyes, my attorneys, because we found out that there was the real assailant that did the crime of a woman jogger. His name was read to us, and we was wondering, who is this guy? And back in 2002, they tried to tie his name into us and saying that we were one, which was untrue because we didn't know each other. So when we heard that name, we thought, wow, the truth could really come out? Will someone really admit to this? And then come to find out that he didn't have anything to lose because he was doing a life sentence. So that's when we heard the name Matias Reyes. And in 1989, he was also known as the East Side Rapist. And he was known for assaulting women in the 80s before the Central Park jogger case. So that was his MO, that he used to do that to others. And that's how I became to know him.
How long after that you heard the name and your lawyers were investigating him, were you released?
Oh, wow. Well, I was released in 1997, but we were still fighting for the civil suit.
So you were out of jail by the time his name came up.
Right. I was out of jail in 1997. The only two that were still in prison was Corey Wise and Raymond Santana. They didn't get released yet. So even though I was out of prison, it still felt like I was inside because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't adjust. So I felt like I was trapped inside my own home. So when we found out about Matias Reyes, I was actually working that night. And one of my best friends called me about this guy. And he told me, you heard about, they found the real guy. And I thought that maybe he was doing some type of sick joke that wasn't funny at the time, but it was actually true.
One of the things that has gotten a lot of attention, especially since Donald Trump ran for president and was elected president, was that when this occurred, the attack, the rape, that he took out a full-page ad in the newspaper calling for the death penalty. And, a lot of people looked at that and said, okay, here's this businessman with a lot of money, he must have some credibility. What were your thoughts when you heard about that?
How this individual even know our character or know our family or our upbringing to have that over our head, because he was the one that ignited the torch, ignited the quote unquote calling of the people to have us executed. And if he would have had his way, I wouldn't be here today speaking on my behalf, because the perception of us and the perception that he had that we were some type of gang or some type of cult that was going around doing things to people. So if he would have had his way, we wouldn't be here. And just for him to have the audacity to do that, because he had the strength and the power and the wealth and to be wealthiness to do that, it was shameful, to be honest. And then up until this day, even after the fact, we never received an apology for that. Do we care about it now? No. But if that would have happened in 2002, then it would have been a different situation.
So you said that you still felt guilty even though you weren't in prison any longer. Did you ever stop feeling that way? When did you start feeling somewhat normal that, okay, I can work, I can get married, I can have a family, that it was somewhat normal?
Yeah. I never felt guilty, but I felt like, really, to be honest, in 2002, when the case got overturned, we had that, quote unquote, the monkey off our back. And the civil suit didn't matter to us. It was just that letting people know that we didn't do it. Because during that time, we were screaming that we was innocent, but it was like whispers to the world. We felt like no one was listening to us. But even since we were young, we were saying that we were innocent. But the outpour of the negative attention outweighed that, So, after 2002, we started to feel okay, it's going to go in the right direction. But we were wrong. Because even in 2002, there were people still doubting us after the fact. So it was shameful that we still had to fight for our innocence when we are actually innocent. So it was up until actually, but When They See Us came out, the Netflix series where it gave us our voice back. But initially, when we first started, it was my good friend Ken Burns that gave us our voice back. And then as time went on, we became more vulnerable to it.
So you realize, of course, I'm sure, that there are still people out there who probably think you're guilty. One of the reasons being that when Reyes was arrested and charged and convicted of this, it didn't get near the attention that it did when the five of you were arrested. What do you say to those people?
It's some people that's, it's a phrase when people so stuck on the lies, they begin to believe it themselves. And as time went on, in the beginning, we used to think about that. But now we know, and I always say God knows, and our family, people that truly know us knows that it was impossible that we did it. Even if let's take out the forensics. Let's take out that there was lack of physical evidence. If you add that to it, there's no way possible. And I know one time when a woman was actually attacked, they showed in a park that it was only 4 footsteps. Her and Mateus Reyes, not 5, 6 teenagers. You would have seen so many footprints there. And for kids, I know for me as a teenager, my daughter, there's DNA everywhere when she eats a sandwich. When there's crumbs everywhere, so you're going to tell me 6 kids went and attacked a woman and nothing happened, no evidence whatsoever. So to people that still believe that or still do, because it probably is, God bless you.
It's Black History Month. Many people, when they think of Black history, go back to Harriet Tubman, go back to the 1850s, 1860s when African Americans were enslaved. But you're part of Black history. What do you think about that?
It's mind-boggling, but I embrace it. I embrace it because now I know I have the torch. And for our ancestors that passed it to us and to be mentioned in the same breath is unbelievable. I'm a very humble person. So when people tell me that you are Black history, you're a part of this, it's refreshing because I know I still have a lot of work to do. And all I want to do is make my ancestors proud that, they paved the way for me to be here. So especially during this time, I do everything in my due diligence to pass the word on and raise awareness to others.
Do you think that one of the reasons that the five of you were arrested and charged and assumed to be guilty was because you were Black and Latino?
Yeah, let's be clear. That was the absolute truth that we were people of color. And it's shameful that we're still dealing with that, even to this day. The struggle still continues. And during that time, it was the time to have, people of color, Black and Latino at that time, to be arrested for the situation because it was sexy at the time. It was the thing to do, And we don't want people to be not persuaded of that because it does happen and still do. And that was the main reason why. So my job today and my other brothers is to change the dynamic, to show people that we all are the same. We all have to be all put on our pants the same way. We all should be treated the same way. So that's something that we still have to work on. And, I'm optimistic, but I'm also a realist that we still deal with this.
Kevin Richardson, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.